Hi everyone, and welcome to our ChurchTrac Creating Budgets webinar. I'm Lori.
I'm Wes.
And we're going to have some fun today with our creating budgets options and getting started with this process.
Yes. And by the way, if you have not yet set up accounting, or maybe you just set up accounting but you're still trying to learn the features, definitely check out our YouTube videos on setting up accounting and Accounting 101. We actually just did that not too long ago. Yep. And we walk through kind of how to do all that. That way you're all set up and ready to tackle budgets. And oh yes, speaking of learning, how could I forget this?
I don't know.
If you ever need help in ChurchTrac, all you have to do is click that green help button to the far right. Lori's showing it on the screen,
here.
I think. And that way you can create a support ticket. You can go to the online user guide, schedule a phone call.
User guide.
Yes.
Okay. Also, if you're on Facebook, okay, you can join our Facebook users group, and there you can ask questions of peers that are using the program and see how they use it.
That is right. There are churches from all around the world using ChurchTrac, and chances are if you've had a question about something, there's probably another church that's had that question too.
Absolutely.
And you can talk to each other on that. So we have plenty of time set aside in this webinar to answer all of your questions and everything. So what I'm actually going to do here for our people that are attending live today, I am going to disable the chat right now. We will enable our Q&A mode later on, where we'll actually dedicate tons of time at the end to answer all of your questions. So hold tight to those questions and we'll tackle them. And by we'll, I mean Lori mostly. I'm just here to kind of facilitate the question asking here. All right, so in this webinar today, we're going to cover finding your budget baseline, which is so important, creating your budget, and then we're going to round things off with budget reports. So, is everybody ready? You ready, Lori?
I'm ready.
Well, let's get started.
Okay.
So let's talk about finding your budget baseline, shall we?
Okay.
Now, the makings of a great church budget, they start with the baseline. Now, we need an accurate baseline to really know what we can actually budget for. And our baseline starts with the what of our ministry?
Income.
Yes, the income. And we're going to talk about income a lot for that reason. So your income includes your tithes, your offerings, anything that is not
designated.
It's so important. So what are some examples of like designated things, Lori?
So designated contributions would be if you are supporting a missionary, if you donate money specifically to the youth group or to the choir ministry or something like that. You're tagging it and saying, this is earmarked for this purpose. Therefore, it's not including in the budget. Anything that's included in the budget is general income, tithes and offerings, that kind of thing.
Yep. Now, Lori, how would someone go about getting like their numbers to even get a baseline going? Like, how would you know your income and all that?
It's so funny you should ask, Wes. Oh my goodness. If you are using ChurchTrac and you're using the giving screen to enter your contributions, you can go to the giving screen, go to your giving reports, okay? Under giving reports, you're actually going to set your date range for last year's date. This year's not complete yet. We don't know what we're going to need or what we're going to have at the end of the year, so we want to base it on at least last year's figures at the very least. So set your date range. Scroll down just a smidge to the category overview report. And you say, well, Lori, what's that going to show, right, Wes?
I want to know, what's that going to have on it?
This is going to show all the categories that received income last year. You go, well, you just told me I couldn't use designated categories. That's correct, you can't, but you can glean information in here and at least get an idea of general offerings, pledge totals, tithes, things like that are general fund monies, okay? This is the figure that you would start with for your budget baseline calculations.
Okay. Now, something worth kind of noting here when we're talking about like the giving screen and accounting screen is kind of like the deposit part of that and what that means. Can you like just really briefly talk about that? Even though it's not super to do with budgets, it's still really important when it comes to doing budgets.
Wes says really briefly. He's given me a smidge of time.
A
smidge. So when you are entering contributions, you're using the details of the categories that are income. We do not track expenses in the giving screen, okay? We're only tracking income. When you enter those contributions, you get a giving summary at the bottom, okay? This giving summary can be short or it can be quite intensive. It just depends on the contribution date, who gave what. When you go to create these deposits into accounting, you want these giving summary details to transfer to accounting. The minus of that, or the manual addition of those deposits into accounting, you lose this detail. Been doing this for a long time now. I've seen mistakes. I've seen everything grouped under one heading.
Yeah.
That's not the way we want to do it. You want to create the deposit. If you're using the giving screen and you have accounting, you will have this feature. When you click this button, it gives you a list of all the contributors. It gives you the option to select an account, okay? And then you create the deposit, which then takes all of those contributions and puts them into
The accounting screen.
There you go. So, and then I get a notification. It was done successfully.
Cool. And if you want to know more about that and like kind of the whole process and why to do that, Accounting 101, we cover this.
We do.
So you can check that out in our previous videos. Now, are there any church plants here? So I'm looking at you, church plants. So church plants want to create a budget, and the first thing they wonder was, how do I create a budget if I'm a church plant? It's not like I have all this data to pull from and everything.
And tons of money, too.
We wish. That would make it
Right?
a lot easier to plant churches. So if you're a church plant and you have no previous year's income and you're wanting to create a budget and get your baseline going, then what you'll want to do is gather all of the pledges from your parent church. So what your parent church, if you have a parent church, is said that they're going to give you for the year, and then all your current pledgees. So everybody that said, hey, we're going to support your church plant, and that's what you want to go off of to get your income. Now, we often see ministries create their budget based on their expenses from last year, on what they perceive as what their expenses will be. Lori's already saying, don't do it.
We strongly do not recommend this.
We do not. In the words of Michael Scott, no. So,
I love that.
Lori, why shouldn't churches create a budget based off of their expenses?
Well, Wes, if I don't know how much money I'm going to make, how do I know how much money I can spend?
That's very true.
Okay? So if you just say, okay, this is what I think our expenses are going to be, then you have to figure out a way to get that money to pay for those expenses.
Yep.
Okay? If you only take in $50,000 this year, you don't want to set up a $250,000 budget.
That'd be really bad.
It'd be really bad. So base your foresight on the fact that you are going to have income and you can afford to pay your bills, right? Right.
And so we're wanting to kind of get what our like net position, I guess, would be the starting point to get our baseline.
Right.
And so how would we get our net position?
Okay. So if you're using the accounting screen previously and you've got giving and you've got expenses entered, you can use what's called the income statement. The income statement report is going to show you all of your income, all of your expenses, and your net position at the bottom, okay? If you're using a spreadsheet, you can calculate these totals. What you want is last year's non-designated income minus last year's expenses. That's going to give you your net position.
Perfect.
Does your net position have to be positive or negative, Wes?
I want it to be positive, right?
Well, ideally, but sometimes it's not. I mean,
true.
We've had some wonky years recently with COVID, and some churches have grown, some churches have not. So it could be a negative,
Correct.
okay? So then what you're going to do is you're going to take last year's income minus your net position, and that's going to give you your baseline. Or plus your net
I was
position.
about to say
It's
plus,
plus or
right?
minus. It kind of depends on if you had money or didn't.
If it's a negative or a positive, yes. So if what your net position was positive, you're going to add it to it. If it was a negative, which
You're gonna
now we're
subtract.
starting to get to the realms of mathematics, and I'm
Right.
not the best.
We're not going down that road today.
So and so that's how you get your budget baseline. So once you get all that, then you're ready to begin creating an account or your
Creating
budget,
your budget.
right?
Ideally. But there's one thing you really have to make sure you have in place, okay? And I know you were going to think, okay, well, how bad can it be? You have to have categories in place. You have to have income categories in place. Hopefully, if you're using the giving screen, you have those. You also have to have your budget line items. You have to have the categories for all the expenses that you're going to be tracking. If you don't have those in place already, because you just started using accounting, or this is the first time you've really used budgets, or God forbid you're actually using your general offerings for every single transaction, if that's the case, you really need to get in there and build your categories. Those categories are going to help you track your expenses accurately.
And just to make sure, you're not talking about funds, you're talking about categories.
Categories.
Okay.
The budget, the overall church budget is based on your general fund. The other funds that you could be using or base budgets on will be your youth ministry and or men's ministry or something like that, but those are separate ministry budgets, not the church budget.
So just to kind of quickly kind of recap categories for those of the people out there, or myself included, that are not the best with them or not quite sure what's going on with them, how do we get to them and how do we change them or add them?
It's so very interesting that you asked that question. In your accounting screen, and you do want to create your expense categories in the accounting screen, you're going to go to the light blue bar at the top of your tab, okay? Click on your categories, and you see I have categories in place. I have bolded black ones, which are my parent categories, and then
Okay.
I have a regular font black of my subcategories. But when you want to create a category, you go to the bottom and create a new category. And you say, okay, Lori, I don't have that button. You do if you scroll all the way to the bottom of your list. It just depends on what you have in place already to whether you'll see that or not.
Okay.
I'm just going to create a category here called example. I'm so original.
The example category.
So in my example, whenever you create a new category, it always goes to the bottom of the list, all the way at the bottom. You do have the ability to move this category up and down with the up-down arrows. These are not clickable. You just hold your mouse down and move it around, okay? It's called drag and drop. Now, aside from being able to move it where you want it, you have properties over here on the right-hand side of your screen. Those properties are going to be your category name, a number. If you use one, not everybody uses numbers. They're not necessary, but some people like them. So use them if you want to, okay? A subcategory of, if you have a list of parent categories already created, you can subcategorize this one. We're not going to today. Is it an income or expense category? Indicate this. You need to be able to determine if it's seen in the giving screen or if it's seen in the accounting screen
Now,
and how it's used.
I'm going to ask you this question. Are there cases where you have like a category in which you have both an income and expense category
Yes.
of like the same thing?
So you would have benevolence, for example. You would have a benevolence income category and you would have a benevolence expense category. Some people like to track what they call in-out money just with a single income category. That's fine. If you don't need to see the details on that, you can use it that way. Most churches want to see the details of what came in and what went out. Therefore, you want an income and expense category. They will not sit together, and total up one another, but in your net position on your reports, it will show you that information.
All right, perfect. And I know we talk a lot about categories, but it's kind of like the foundation of this, because if we don't have our categories right,
You're not
then
creating a budget.
Yeah, our budget's just going to be all crazy. So, all right, so we have the categories, Lori. Now I want to start creating my budget. How do we do that?
Okay, Wes, this is where it gets really intense. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay. So you go up here in the light blue bar at the top and you click on the word budgets.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
It's not as intense as you made it seem, Lori.
That's because it's actually so painfully easy.
All right.
Okay? So when you create your budget, you're going to go into the budget screen. You're going to create a new budget. You're going to name it. We're going to name this one creatively Budget 2022.
Sounds
Okay.
fitting.
Your budget start date is dependent on how your church does your budget. If you base it on the fiscal year, if you base it on the school year, if you base it on however, it's an annual, meaning a 12-month period of time, budget. I'm going to start mine January 1st of 2022. Note here, all of the months start with 1. We don't start our budget in the middle of the month.
Okay.
Okay.
And just to make sure I'm following here, this doesn't matter anything with my giving screen as far as like contributions, because we're always doing contribution statements from January 1 to December 31st, and so that doesn't really affect this at all.
That's your federal government requirement, not your fiscal year or your school year or however you run your budget.
Okay.
The two are separate.
Perfect.
Okay? Once you have this data in place, you go, okay, and we get a new screen. There are a couple of options in this screen that make creating a budget painfully easy. Okay? You can add each category in your budget list individually. And you say, well, what's easy about that? Nothing.
No.
There's not one thing. Or I can go over here and add all categories.
I choose that one.
I choose this one too. Now, There's a couple of scenarios here that you want to keep in mind when you're creating your budget. You have add all parent categories with no subcategories, and you have add all categories plus subcategories. I would say add both. And the reason being is your setup of the budget as we get further into this is going to dictate how you see your budget.
Okay.
So it's kind of important to see those details. Plus, I'm really OCD and I want to know all the details. Then you hit OK, and you get a little bit of love, joy, peace, and then bada bing, you have
Bada
a
bing.
budget. Sorry, I really like that term. Now, you say, well, Lori, it brought everything in. Yes, it did. We don't need our 2021 building campaign because it was 2021 and this is a 2022 budget. So we just get rid of it.
Okay.
Love, real easy. We don't budget love offerings, so we get rid of it.
So all you're doing is just clicking the little trash can icon.
Cleaning it up.
Clean it up. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Now, once you get your budget cleaned up, you want to start adding your numbers. Where do you get your numbers? Oh, we talked about this already, so you're going to have to defer back to the beginning of the video.
Yes.
So enter your contribution amount or your budgetary amounts for whatever your things are. When you're setting this up, there are two pieces of information that you need to pay attention to. The selection of include subcategories and the selection of include in totals. If you have a parent category, and I'm just going to scroll down here to wages, and you say, well, I don't put anything under salaries and wages, that's just a header, well, then you want to set this to no, but I want all of my salaries to roll up to a number. Then you set this to yes, okay? This can stay 0. You can put a number in here if you want to. Depending on your selections, it's going to determine how your budget shows the figures, okay? This is going to be, if you need additional help in this area, you can always contact support, but I would put your numbers in and play with it because you know what you want to see in your budget. Far better than we do. We can tell you the how and the why, but we can't really tell you what you're looking for because you have to know that, okay?
Tell me about this yearly thing here. So is this giving me the option where I can do yearly or monthly? Or?
Okay, so let's see if I have any VBS in here because that's a really good one. I don't.
We have a VBS somewhere. I know we do in this account.
I know we do. I just don't remember where it is. But let's talk. It might be, I don't know.
There it is, Children's Ministry Income, VBS.
Okay, so we really only take contributions for VBS during a few months, right? So the beautiful part about this is I can say, make this a date range, and when I do, I can set the date range that I want this to be figured in my budget. Okay? Yes, you can set up a budget on a monthly. Don't. It's going to calculate that for you. It's going to set up your budget monthly because it's taking your annual averages and breaking it up over 12 months. And you say, well, Lori, my budget is higher in the summer because we live in Florida and it's really hot, and so my electric bill's higher, but it's lower in the winter, or vice versa. I have to have snow removed and I don't have snow in Florida, blah, blah, blah. That's okay. When you average out your expenditures and you average out your income, you're going to be able to do reports that are going to provide you all of your data tracking.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so there's a reason that I tell you to do it this way. Okay, once you get all of this in place, Wes, it's so difficult to save this. You go down here and you go, close.
And that's it.
And that's all there is to it. And so then your budget's in place.
So obviously, if we were for real doing a budget right now, we would have put in all these numbers and stuff.
Yeah.
So you'll have all your numbers. Right now, we just have a bunch of zeros because we just don't have time in this webinar here to just start punching in a bunch of numbers.
But do keep in mind, this display budget's value is really important because if you come in, if I go and cheat and I go back to my 2021 budget, okay, and I look at and I see these pink colored, what's going on. This is indicative of the fact that I'm under or over budget, depending on whether I'm looking at income or expenses. If I actually get a true picture of the month that we're in, it's going to indicate to me how I'm actually doing, okay? That's really important. So let me go back to my 2022 budget. Okay.
All right.
Now, budget reports. These reports are only found in your budget. These are not accounting reports. These are budget reports. So when I answer questions in doing support and my guys are answering questions, one of the questions that we always get is, where do I get a month-to-month analysis of expenditures?
It's a pretty common one.
It is, but it's a budget item, okay? Because you're tracking month to month. So when you have your budget in place and you have everything where it needs to be, you can come in here and you can run a simple yearly budget. This is just a picture that you're going to pass out to the congregation of what you want them to approve. Okay, these are what we expect. This is what we expect to spend. This is what we expect to take in, yada, yada,
So this
yada.
is the one we're typically handing out to the congregation. Okay.
Because we're getting started and it just needs to be voted on and approved, okay?
Okay.
Budget versus actual is a report that's going to tell us this is what we budgeted, this is actually where we are. It's going to allow us to see how we're doing. This is month to month based on your display budget values.
Okay.
Okay? Now, this is an exportable report.
Okay. So if
Okay.
I wanted to throw this on an Excel sheet and combine it with something else
Or take some figures out and just so that you can see how we're really doing if you're having your monthly budget meeting or whatever, and you just want to discuss discrepancies or whatever, this would be the place to do it.
Okay.
The monthly budget analysis report. I'm not going to lie, I love this report. It breaks down each single month of how we had income, how we had expenses, and where we are. And it does this monthly. So it allows you to see trending.
Okay.
Okay? It is also exportable.
That's good to know.
There's a budget comparison. If this is not your first year doing a budget, then you can compare to previous years.
Which makes it really easy.
Really easy. 2020 was probably not the year you want to compare to.
No, definitely not.
And then if you say, oh gosh, I don't know how we're really doing. I feel like we're not hitting the mark here. We can do a projected budget report, and that's going to let us know based on how we're trending right now, how it looks towards the rest of the year.
Now, granted, we need to be putting our data into ChurchTrac so we can actually have something to measure against.
If you don't see income in your budget, it's because you're not creating the deposits.
Okay.
Okay? If you see negatives in your expenditures, it means that you're depositing into an expense category.
Okay.
Okay? Because by virtue of the fact that you have an income at the top, that's positive numbers, expenses at the bottom are negative numbers. So we don't add those positives and negatives, it's just a common sense thing. So if you are seeing negatives in your expenditures, that means that you're depositing into your expense categories.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, let's say, all right, we've done our budget for 2022 or whatever year it may be, and we fast forward another year, and it's budget time again. Please don't tell me I have to punch in all these numbers and do everything again like we just did.
Of course you do. No. We make it easy in ChurchTrac. So at the top in the blue bar for all of your new budget, edit budget, delete budget, clone your budget.
Clone budget.
Okay. So, but cloning a budget means that I go like this and it says, are you sure you want to do this? And you go, okay. Love, joy, peace, happy ending. Here you go. You get your new budget. You rename it 23. You start your date in 2023. 2023, and you just update your figures. Notice there are no numbers in here because it's just, it will pull your figures for you if they're in there. Ours happen to be all zeros, but
So if we had our figures in there, it would have pulled them, and so oftentimes
your
I feel
budget
like,
doesn't change.
Yeah, I mean, like we may be tweaking some numbers here and there, maybe adding a category, taking out a category, but overall our budgets aren't drastically changing every year, and so this makes it to where I don't have to keep reinventing the wheel every single year.
So as your treasurer, this should make your treasurer a very happy person because they don't have to recreate the wheel every year. Sometimes they're going to get a square if they do that.
And I bet some treasurers are probably going to act like they're doing a whole lot, and really they're just hanging out because ChurchTrac already did all the stuff.
Right, that's even more fun. So, there you go.
So that is pretty much everything in terms of how we start the process of getting a budget going, how we create the budget, how we get our reports and stuff. So there it is.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, sorry, guys. If you haven't watched our webinars, you really need to.
We have a little bit of fun. Well, let's go ahead and change gears a little bit. And if you're watching this at a later time, you won't have the opportunity to join us in our Q&A mode. But just know that you can do your own Q&A mode with our support team by just clicking that green help button.
Green help right there.
But what I'm going to go ahead and do here is we're going to enable what we call our Q&A mode. And our Q&A mode gives you the opportunity to ask us questions in real time, right here, right now.
Putting me on the spot.
Yes, we're putting Lori on the spot, but I think you'll know pretty much every answer to every question here. I have faith in you. And while we're kind of getting this Q&A mode ready and some of the questions start coming in, Lori, just remind everybody, where they can go and watch all of our videos and everything.
So we have an amazing YouTube channel.
Yes.
And I am not a YouTube novice, so if I can find it, anybody can find it. It's youtube.com, and then there's a little search bar, and you type in ChurchTrac, and then you get this amazing channel that has all of our webinars, it has all of our how-tos, our quick tips, our user guide videos. It's amazing. So very helpful. That's a great place to go for that. And I just want to plug one more piece of our software while we're waiting for questions to come in. If you are using your budgets and you do have other ministries that you go to the ministry leaders and say, okay, tell me what you need for your budget. I need this information by X days. And of course, because they're busy, some of them are bivocational, they just forget. So if they are users in the ChurchTrac software, they can actually, as an administrator, you can create a task for them in our projects and task stream in the home screen so that you can remind them that they need this deadline, this information to you, and then you can message them because we have SMS messaging in the program, and you can email them if you're using our email function. So there are so many different notifications that you can send, but if you create a project for them, okay, it's going to send them a message in their whatever email address you've got associated with their user. So it's really, really cool. Use it.
All right. Well, we're trying to see if we have some questions coming on in. I know we're on a little bit of a lag, it looks like, and because I just got a message from someone saying that they wanted to ask us some questions here. But yes, we do have our Q&A mode enabled, so that way you can ask some questions here in real time and take advantage of this opportunity and not have to create a support ticket later on. And so we have got it opened up and ready. And while we've got kind of waiting on some questions, Lori, could you kind of touch a little bit more on that whole creating deposit thing again, just because this is such a common thing that we see, and it's a really easy fix.
Sure. So in the giving screen, as you're entering those contributions, okay, you get these summary details, okay? This information that is shown in here does not automatically populate into accounting. If you change something in the giving screen, it does not update in accounting. You have to redeposit. So what you want to do is make sure that you're creating the deposit, okay? This case, the deposit's already been created. But if I had to delete the deposit because I updated some information, I would still get this prompt. I would say, okay, and it would then give me the information. The beautiful part about this deposit screen is if I updated a deposit, I could just go in and select whatever it was that I added and then select the account and add it to that deposit. Did you know that, Wes?
That's awesome.
So all those details are crucial because these details update your budget if they're budgetary items. So you want to make sure those details go. Okay?
Perfect. I don't know if there was a little bit of a lag there with our Q&A mode, but it is open if you do want to ask some questions. I saw one person actually message me and said that the Q&A mode was not popping up for them, which is strange, but we'll keep it open just a few more minutes just in case anybody has any questions here. So we encourage you, anything budget related, let us know if you have a question on it. We are here and ready.
Well, Wes, I actually do, because I do support, I do have a list of questions that are normally asked of us.
Well, and we had one this morning too. I remember you were telling me about.
Oh my goodness, yes. So a couple of the questions that I get most of the time is, what if our fiscal year starts in October? Can your budget handle that? Absolutely. You can start your budget in any month that you want it to start. It just always has to start at the first of the month. So when you're in the accounting screen, and I'm going to go into our accounting screen, I'm going to go back to my budgets and select my budget for next year. If I want to edit this budget and I want to say that it started October 1st of 2021, I can do that. This is going to pull information based on your entries in the transactions register in your accounting screen from that time frame that the budget starts.
Okay.
And it's going to pull for 1 year. Not longer, not shorter, 1 year. Okay?
Well, I don't see any more questions, but I know there's this other question here, so let's take care of that one too.
Okay. Wes, you asked one of these today of me. Why do I have a negative amount in my expense categories? And let me reiterate, if you have negative entries in your expense categories, okay, it's because you have moved money to that category as a positive, whether that it like in payroll, for example, for taxes, or you have used an expense category to add to a deposit. This happened. It happens pretty regularly, and we get this question a lot. So let me show you something that you can avoid this with, okay? If you're the administrator of your account, you can go into the settings menu, you can go to admin settings and screen preferences. Under screen preferences, there is a giving tab, and there is an option there that says hide expense categories on the giving screen. This way, you can avoid adding contributions to an expense category. If the treasurer is not the finance person that's entering these contributions, then this definitely needs to be checked because you don't want your finance people entering contributions to an expense category.
Okay.
Okay?
And then, can you reiterate again just the whole monthly thing, because that kind of didn't fully compute with me in terms of when you're creating the monthly for that period on your budget.
Oh, okay. I know what
Yeah.
you're talking about. Okay. So when you're in edit mode, this is the only way you're seeing these entries. You have the ability, okay, to say, okay, I have, maybe you're just doing, I would probably not do it this way, but you just want to do a camp, a youth camp, and this is just a month that you're collecting these contributions for youth camp. This would be a monthly budget. It's still going to break down the amount that you put in this field over a 12-month period. Okay? It's not a monthly budget. Budgets are not based on month-to-month expenditures. It's based on an annual overview picture of what you think you're going to take in and what you think you're going to spend broken out over a period of 12 months.
Okay.
Okay, the budget's going to average that. That does not mean it's a problem if you spend $400 on the electric bill in August, but you only spend $200 in October, because your gas bill may go up because of heat.
Okay. All right.
Okay. One of the questions that we get a lot, let me see if I can show you this, is what are these pink lines? Okay. These pink lines are indicative of you either being over budget or under budget. It's just kind of a warning letting you know that based on, like, for example, our 2021 budget says that we're budgeted for $21,250 for the month of January, but currently we've only received $7,000, so we're under budget for that item. That's why you get those pink entries.
Okay.
This same thing works for your expenditures.
Cool. Well, I think we've hit that point where we have pretty much just covered everything there is to cover about budgets. And so, again, if you need help out there with budgets and just trying to make sense of all this, please reach out to our team. You can create a support ticket, schedule a phone call, or just check out some of our other previous videos where we go through some of these accounting features. And Lori, Facebook group, that is definitely, probably one of the best places to
It's
get
kind of
help.
cool because you have people helping people, which is the idea. I mean, we want to partner with you in your ministry, and that's kind of our motto. But you also have an entire community
Yes.
that's out there partnering with you and wanting you to be as successful as we want you to be.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Lori, for just putting all this knowledge on us here and helping me learn a little bit more about budgets today.
Me and my data dumps.
Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we will talk to you soon. See ya.
Bye.